we ever done something like this before?
It seems to me, what's going to keep it from, okay, we've got enough money now for the next 5 years. Oops, 5 years later, gosh, we have a deficit.
Because we want to solve the problem.
You had 4 years to solve the problem.
Actually, I've been on the city council for 2 years. Thank you. You know, I mean, looking at Kevin Faulkner is one of the people against this proposition, yet he's been on the council for 5 years. You ask yourself, who's committed to solving this problem? This new council has come in and we've worked hard. We've implemented 6% compensation reductions, imposing contracts on unions. Some of the unions actually endorsed me. I imposed contracts on them, pay cuts to them. When we had an opportunity to outsource our IT help desk to save over $1 million for taxpayers, we took that opportunity. We've reduced the interest rates for our drop program. We've made reductions. When there's been money on the table to be saved, this council has taken that opportunity. The fact is that we have no choice but to make reductions. But we don't want to make reductions to police and fire, the critical services that you need and depend on. That's where we're at, and that's why Proposition B is on the ballot.
Well, okay, 1 minute, and then let's, because we want to get everybody's questions in as much as possible.
In the last 2 years, I do something called the $100,000 Club. I look at what people actually are earning in city government. In the last 2 years, during the midst of a massive recession, as people were going and being laid off in the nonprofit, for-profit world, as politicians were saying they were cutting services, budget deficits, the number of people in the city of San Diego city government earning more than $100,000 a year went up by 44% in 2 years' time. In the last year, they gave 1,600 employees out of 10,500 employees salary increases. In the water and sewer department, 90% of the employees received bonuses ranging from $1,400 to $6,200. Total of $28 million of your water bill over 3 years went out in employee bonuses. If you retire in the city of San Diego at age 67, the average city employee at age 67, which is Social Security, will receive 129% of their highest salary for life. And that's not my number, that's a number from the mayor's office, from the Mercer Actuarial Company. Plus, they are guaranteed free taxpayer-funded health care for life, paid for by the city's general fund or enterprise fund, depending upon which agency they worked for. The top 10 city retirees this year, when you look at their payments, are going to share for the rest of their life $61 million. The former city head librarian earned $139,000 her last year of service. In retirement, she earns $227,000 a year, plus an undisclosed 401k payout, plus that free health care for life. Her payout over the remainder of her life will be $6 million from the pension system. You've said you've done enough? No, you have far more to do, and the council better start getting cracking before asking for a $500 million tax increase on San Diego's working families. I don't understand.
Go ahead, no, ask another question. I'm happy to answer.
Mr. Courtney?
Got a question. I'll direct this to the city attorney. Also, basically, what are the teeth in Proposition D to make sure that these cuts will come into really happen? You know, where do you see the enforcement, the teeth?
What is the mechanism to ensure that the cuts will occur?
Right.
Read the conditions carefully. As I said, you don't get more than what is in there, and you don't get less. A few of them do have to do with cuts, but they're not quantified. Many of them have to do with ordinances and changes. The council and the mayor have not quantified how much in that ordinance, how much they're committing to save. That had to do with the resolution that was passed, and as Mr. Lunar pointed out, that's not binding on this particular initiative, but it was a sense of what the city council has said that they want to do. The guarantee that the conditions occur is his certification and our advice to him. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Ann?
I have two comments. One is, if I understand what you're saying, the governing thing is whether an ordinance is passed, not that a certain amount of dollars are actually saved. So point number one, that's kind of like, it's really easy to sit at city council and pass an ordinance. The issue is what happens, does that boots on the ground really do it? The second is, I spent most of my career in Washington, a good part of it in the Defense Department, okay? And the first thing that you do when you're preparing a budget. If you're the Forest Service, you turn off the lights in the Boston Monument. If you are in some other agency, you take the thing. And I really think, as a skeptical citizen, that cutting back on lifeguard, fire, and all that is intended to scare people. But if you look at what your real costs are, which is personnel and the resistance to outsourcing to commercial solutions that could do it for at least 50% less, it's a disingenuous proposition, in my opinion.
Be happy to try and respond.
Why don't we let him respond? Now, we have a 7 o'clock rule here. Does anybody have any objection if we go over a little bit?
No. We'll stay.
Okay. This is great. Thank you.
Let me try and respond. You mentioned the Washington Monument and where you go first. I mentioned that the mayor and the city council have already cut over $330 million from our budget. That's partly reforms that are ongoing savings, and others are cuts to the budget. Most of that was done without touching police and fire. The reason why we brought Proposition D forward and we're talking about police and fire cuts is because after making that many reductions, there's little left to go except for public safety. Public safety represents about 52% of our budget. And to have to cut another $72 million out of that budget means that we will go there. And this is, the choice will be yours. The option is on your ballot on November 2nd of yes or no. Without additional revenue,
no, I understand what you're saying, and I think you misunderstood what I'm saying. I am saying that you chose those high visibility things because people never want to lose firemen. What you have not done is taken on the labor unions, the personnel costs, the civil service thing to say this illegal pension reform that you had happen a few years ago needs to be reversed. We need to clean up the government, and we need to outsource. And the positions you talked about eliminating, I believe I read, are people that just was hired. Okay, it's a very disingenuous representation, but I'm not dealing with
Let me try and address the personnel costs because Mr. DeMaio. We had a city attorney that spent 4 years doing that, trying to roll back vested benefits. He was unsuccessful. The changes that we've made have been for new hires. New hires don't get dropped. As the city attorney mentioned, do not get retiree health care. The 13th check is gone. We can do what we can for new hires. We're still litigating for the people who are already in the system, working on substantially equal and trying to get them to pay more amounts, trying to encourage, and one of the things in Prop D is a 401k plan that would voluntarily allow people to leave the defined benefit plan to go to a defined contribution plan. But the law is law, and at some point in time, we are not able to do that. We've done the 6% pay cuts. We've done the new programs that's more like the private sector. But at the end of the day, I'm stuck with a budget that has to balance on July 1.
Okay, so you're saying that you are prohibited by law from converting union, civil service, county worker, or city worker positions into a more cost-effective way, getting the job done with 50% of the money.
You're mixing the two.
No, why can you not eliminate union jobs and go out and outsource to the tremendous number of companies that we have here in San Diego that are running organizations for the government at much more, 25%, 20 cents to the dollar compared to what a government agency is doing. Just go by an airport sometime, go through the TSA, compare, okay? Private sector versus government. Okay?
You're mixing
you're saying,
you
I want to make sure you understand. You're saying that you are legally prohibited from eliminating government jobs.
Let me try and untangle that because you were talking about vested benefits before.
I'm not talking about vested benefits. I'm talking about...
You were talking about the previous benefits that were conveyed, which are vested benefits. If you're talking about managed competition, that is one of the reforms that is in Proposition D. It's something that you voted on. We passed a managed competition guide, which is the rule book for outsourcing. The mayor has released 2 functions to be outsourced. They are currently, to be competed. Our print shop and our fleet maintenance, that is being put out to bid right now, and we'll move forward with the rest of it. That we're moving toward, and Proposition D helps
I'm
do
not
that.
saying anymore.
If I could just, on the pension reform angle, and Judge Goldsmith, please correct me if I'm wrong, because Jan Goldsmith has done an exceptionally good job of plowing in a thoughtful way through the courts using case law and strategically challenging elements of the pension system. Pension system, I want you to think of like a Christmas tree. There are some ornaments that are glued on. They're vested. You can't change them. Other ornaments are discretionary. You can take them off. And the tree itself is based on contributions. And you can increase contributions and require that city employees Gloria says that we gave a pay cut to city employees, you have to really get an understanding around what does pay cut mean. We actually are starting to require that they pay their fair share, their 50-50 match on contributions for their pension, like the charter anticipates. We also have the ability to collectively bargain as classes using Charter Section 143.1, which does